Welcome to the Moulding Private Practice Show, where we help healthcare practitioners in private practice keep true to their purpose and build a life of mastery by providing the knowledge, skills, and tools to bring their dreams to life. In this episode, we speak to Ashley Jones, a pediatric occupational therapist based in Pretoria, South Africa, about her private practice and everything private practice management related. Ashley Jones, welcome to the show. It's really nice to have you on board just to talk about private practice and being an OT and everything around that. So by the way, when I was researching, having you on the show, I searched for Ashley Jones, and there's like a famous actress with that same name. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Okay.
It took me about.
So I was like, Shaz, why did you invite Ashley Jones? I don't think that's kind of in this type of private practice route, but yeah, I did find it eventually on LinkedIn. But thanks very much for being on the show.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
So tell us, OTs are always interesting for me because, and again, I have to be honest, before we started working with healthcare practitioners, I didn't really know what OTs did. But we've got lots of clients now that are OTs. But for anyone that doesn't know what an OT does, can you maybe, well, I should probably say occupational therapist. So again, we're talking lingo, in the healthcare space, but what does an occupational therapist do?
So an occupational therapist, what our focus is we focus on function. So be it for children, be it for adults, be it for our elderly, we want to see function, and function ties into your occupations. And that's why we occupational therapists. And our occupation is anything that you should be doing in your day. So it can be activities of daily living, which is your things like bathing, dressing, eating, can be instrumental activities of daily living, which is preparing food or doing washing or cleaning. And then we get our work and our education and our play and all of that, depending on what phase of life we are. And sometimes I actually did a post on our therapy page on Facebook for Bright Eyes Therapy, and I went about function and what are the occupations and what are sometimes the hurdles that we face in these occupations. And sometimes, if it's a client that's had a stroke, they might not be able to bath themselves anymore, and they almost need to relearn how to do it or to find ways to compensate. And so it's all about treating these hurdles that are affecting your occupation and what's important to you. If you hate cooking and never want to cook again, we're not going to teach you how to cook. We're not going to do, our rehab's not going to focus on that. But yeah, to just help that so you can be your best person you want to be.
Okay. And tell me, did you always want to be an occupational therapist? I mean, is that how it, did you know that calling from quite a young age, or did it kind of evolve?
So for me, it evolved. I'm almost where the general public is at the moment and didn't really know what OT was. Even with having a brother that was on occupational therapy, I didn't really know what it was. But I've always had a passion for children. So that's where mine stemmed from. And I sat down and I thought, okay, what can I do with this? And my first view was to go into psychology and specifically be a child psychologist. And then I seemed to stumble upon OT and just reading it and reading about the way OT does things and about how they look at things and what you focus on a person's inherent drive, on their own motivation, on all of that. That was like, wow. And then I was sold and I went and studied OT. An amazing career to be in.
So I remember this. So a client told me once, so she was going through the physio route. And so we just have to be careful when we're speaking to physios as well. Physios are cool as well. But she was going down the physio route. And, so at WITS, the two departments are right next to each other. And she was always like, I wonder what this department does. But this is already like into her career, and she changed midstream. And she's like, no, I actually think I like to become an OT. And so she changed midway, which is actually quite interesting. But yeah, I think there's not as much awareness around what an OT does. Again, I think maybe it's for all specialists. I mean, there's some specialists that you obviously only come across their names when you're looking at for certain conditions. Like recently, we were researching what is this, autoimmune diseases, and there's a specialist called rheumatologist, and I've never heard that term at all. But when you start looking at it, then you're like, okay, but even the name doesn't make any sense to autoimmune disease. It's like I would have never come across that until someone pointed that out. But around the idea of OTs, I think there's definitely some awareness that can definitely be done around that. But it's also interesting that you say, you always wanted to work with children. And I did come across that a few times. Lots of clients seem to say that. I'm actually quite envious of that because, you almost had this calling in a way you wanted to go, and you just kind of, found that path, which is really cool, to see. But if we shift gears a bit, you're not just an OT, but you're also an OT now in private practice, which is amazing. So congratulations on that. But has it been an easy road? Has it been like, when you said you want to work with children, did you always know you wanted to go into private practice?
Yeah, sure. So yes, I did know I wanted to go into private practice, and it almost strengthened throughout my studies and going and working with OTs, which made a phenomenal impact on my career and what I had chosen. So I did always know I wanted to be an OT. I didn't think it would come as quickly as it did. So I thought I would be in the profession in a good 10 years, and then I changed over to running my own practice. But the opportunity arose, and I went with it, and I was like, I've got the space, and let's go. And it's been an interesting road. Very, very rewarding. It's a very rewarding thing to have something that you can put your passion into, your full passion and your interests, and just reach a wider population, through doing talks and webinars and all of that. So that's been a very exciting part for me, but it does come with numerous challenges. There's things that no one really tells you about, that 2 months into the practice, you realize, oh, I need to get this up to date, or I need to comply with these regulations. So it's a bumpy road, but I definitely think it's worth it. There's more ups and downs.
Ashley, I'm really glad to hear you say it that way, that, you knew you wanted to own your own business. And when the opportunity came, you jumped at it, because I think so many people have the potential to go into private business or private enterprise and wind up almost second guessing themselves. Now, what they can take away from you is take the leap. Yes, it's going to be difficult. Yes, there's going to be stuff that you're going to have to learn along the way. But taking that leap is definitely far more rewarding at the end of the day. So when you say there were some ups and downs along the way, could you give us a little bit of an indication as to what some of those hurdles might have been, going from working for someone to working for yourself?
Yeah, so I think a lot has to do with the more management part. Being an OT, giving therapy almost comes naturally, and you love it. But then to actually sit down and think, okay, where do I want to go to? Do I want to run a multidisciplinary practice and have a speech working alongside me? Do I just want to be my own person and work on my own? And I think that's, I had a straight path that I'd set out for myself, but that was one of the most difficult, is to adapt that. And for me, I play with children for a living, it's a very fun job, but to sit down and try and do taxes is really not my strong suit. And so a lot of that was quite difficult for me. And luckily I signed up with your billing company from the start. So that almost took a load off me from word get-go. But there's all the you know, like I say, tax and financial planning and all of that that you sometimes let slip by the wayside.
Yeah, and I mean, it's interesting you say that, and that kind of is the story of most of our clients actually, because the therapy part you got, and I want to dial that back a bit as well. The one thing I do like about healthcare practitioners is no one starts immediately and says, I want to go into private practice. You almost always, I mean, I've always heard this being said where you say, I want to get the experience first and I want to see what I want to, if I can actually do this and then go into private practice, which I find quite refreshing, and it's almost like you're building up the skills. So, I would say anyone that's working with someone in private practice, because they've done that, there's almost, the expertise is a little bit more higher than someone, that's just working in a hospital. And it might be, just the way I'm looking at it, but, we've dealt with many professionals or practitioners in private practice, and that seems to be the case with most practitioners. That's what they say, so which I really like. And then when you say the things, about the management and the billing stuff, yeah, that's difficult. I mean, even for a business owner, it's difficult, for someone that wants to be in business. And I find, with practitioners, it is almost like going completely the opposite direction. Us as a team and as a company, and in the last year, we've had to make some choices in terms of, what are the types of clients we want to work with? What are the types of things we want to do? And that was difficult in its own right. And I think, with you being in private practice, choosing to say, actually, I need to do this. How would I do that? Must be quite difficult. We did come across a client recently where she was actually, I think she was in the show last week, but she said, she needed a mentor. And because she had a mentor, the person could show her the ropes, and it was like invaluable for her. Did you find something similar as well?
So yes, yeah, definitely. At the practice I worked at before I opened my own practice, I was really, they involved me in things such as billing, and all the medical aid codes and everything. So already then I had that skill passed on, and, it all depends on who you're working for. But the lady I worked for she's still to this day an amazing mentor, be it for a case that you're unsure of or the more management side. And she said to me when I told her I'm going into my own practice, she said to me, she sat on with me and she said, just make sure you have this and this and this and this and this in place, which was amazing, and to think, I often look back and think, I mean, how difficult would this road have been being in your own practice if it wasn't for her that sat on? I would have had to have figured that all out by myself, and probably sometimes not in a good way. If a parent crashes into your gate and you don't have the right insurances, you're going to learn a very difficult lesson. So it definitely is very important to have a mentor. And, and if you've worked under them, even better, because you know them and they know you, and they know where your personality lies and what you might neglect as well.
That's I'm glad that you collaborated that story, because for me that makes sense. And again, coming from a business point of view, I promise you, it's difficult to find people like that. And the fact that as a healthcare practitioner you can find that is actually amazing, because it definitely gives you an advantage around this stuff. But again, looking at it, and if there was an OT, Ashley, that was starting off now, and she's listening to this and she says, at some point I do want to go into private practice, would there be anything that you would give them as a recommendation in terms of what would they look out for, in terms of the considerations around why they would want to go into private practice?
Yeah, so definitely, I think the most important thing that I'd say to someone is, where's your passion lying? And private practice is so diverse. You can see more physical clients, and especially with occupational therapy, there's so many routes you can go. And I think the first one is to find that passion of yours. What is a passion? Do you love working with older children or younger children or adults or mental health, or where is that lying, and to go from there. Because, yes, the business side is hard, but you can get it right. And there is resources out there, but to follow that passion and to slowly start saying, what is your expectations? Are you aiming to work in a school, or do you want to see the parents? Say from my side, being a pediatric OT, and then to take it from there. And slowly, it's almost like eating an elephant one bite at a time. And as you've got that in place, to then take the next step further and be like, all right, cool. Okay, what therapy styles are you going to offer? Do you like sensory integration? Do you like the floor time? Where's your preference lying? And that is, to me, what I believe, what grows your business is your passion. And yes, there is hurdles in our journey there, but as long as you have that passion and can follow, I think it's the most important to do that. But research is really a very important thing as well. I mean, you need to have a look at where other OT practices are. Are you going to work at home? Do you want, the tax benefits from that? Or do you want to work from a school? Or where's the closest practice to you? You can't open up another practice 3 houses down and think you're going to have a constant flow of clients, because it may not work that way. But I think the further you dive in, but I think the first thing is just to take the first step, and as you start going through that and you get your expectations in a row, you can cover the more, abstract things that we necessarily don't think about, things like your taxes and your insurance, which is very important and probably should be first, but for isn't always. But yeah.
Okay. I'm glad you said that, because it's also another of our business rules is, you don't really want to go, it's like trying to dig water in the desert, and what you're saying is, what I really appreciate about, especially the allied practitioners, you seem to work in a team setting. So, if you don't have this cross referral or cross references, it's going to be very difficult to build up a practice. But if you do have that, and you've got some of those relationships in place, then I think it definitely helps. And in our practice management course, we actually reference, like, sometimes being in a center automatically gives you that, and that's why I think practitioners that are in hospitals, when I go through the list and I see, there's like 10 clinical psychologists, at Morningside Mediclinic. I'm just using that as an example, but they all seem to be busy, and they, it's because of that influx of people and cross-reference, referrals and stuff like that. So if, as you said, if you're starting at home, where would you get your referrals from? Because people are not just going to pitch up at home. In that case, you have to work a lot more harder around your marketing, in terms of being able to drive that. And then also, because you're not just going to be seeing the patient, like, from a single point of view, it has to be a holistic. So who would you then refer out to? And I think those are all of the considerations around it, I would think, which you kind of covered on. Is there anything from a practice management that really surprised you? Like, you didn't quite expect that. And it could be the tax part. You mentioned tax like a few times. It's not our favorite topic, because it's, it always is. It's always been, when it's around tax time, it's the most, people are just, it's not a good topic. There's very few people that enjoy that.
Yeah, so like I think so far my journey with the practice management side has been what I haven't had very your bookings, that plays a big role, because if you in therapy all day, I see children from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m, sometimes now 6 o'clock. How do people book for therapy? They're going to phone you, and what is happening? And, that's a big consideration, and to have things in place, for that. And that was a big one that I came to learn quite quickly. And is also to have that relationship with the parents from the start. They see your name from a Google search or from a friend or whatever, and to take that step and to phone you is actually a big thing. So you need to meet them there, and you need to tell them what you do and help, you know. And if it's, say in my case, I don't see teenage children, so then to be like, you know what, this, I understand this is your best place to go, and this is, you know, who you should see, someone with that interest. So for me, the bookings has been a constant for me, and they don't, you know, I work from home, so for me it's not, you know, the receptionist that is taking your bookings, and it's you doing it and you establishing those relationships. So that's been a big one. And I think all around the financial things are the most difficult, but yeah, you do learn as you go, and, you know, to have a support network around you with people that specialize in it is very important, you know. And I mean, I did the practice management, you know, to help start my own practice. I did that just before I went into practice. And like in my head, so I've still got my little bookie where I wrote down the notes to focus on. And I go back there and I'm like, oh, have I crossed all those things out? You know, have I met all those expectations? But it's a constant thing. You need to just keep up to date.
Shaz, anything on your side? And I'm just going to kick off with the next question, which was, so working from home, has that been what you expected? And is that something that you would recommend to someone as opposed to working at a center? I'm just curious. With my wife, we tried both approaches, and to be honest, now she's at we've got offices, and she's kind of like her centers there. But it was a bit of a challenge initially working from home, purely from that perspective, especially with new clients. I suppose it would be different with you, because it's more pediatric work. So the parents are coming through, but, especially if you're dealing with adults, you're not really, well, we live in South Africa, so, security is an issue and stuff like that. So it's more of a challenge. Do you have any insights around that in terms of someone that's considering starting up at home?
Yeah, so look, working from home has worked very well for me. One of the things I decided on from the start with my IT practice is that I want lots of space. I need lots of space, and that's what made it possible. Center, you might not get that experience. I wanted to base my practice off, this whole holistic view, and like I said, inside and out, and a lot of space. But with that, like you said, a additional environment, if you're going to someone's home and it doesn't always give the best image then. So you have to stay very up to date if you work from home with those type of things. And it's sometimes things you don't think about if you have a friend visiting, like you know what you do with that. So I think luckily for your pediatric clients, it is a better thing. But I do feel that a center also has a very good approach, and you can knock on other people's doors a lot quicker. And one thing I've battled with from working from home is that it was quite a lonely experience, coming from a practice where there was another 2 OTs, to suddenly being all on your own and no one, is there to quickly, what about this? What should I do? That is difficult. And it's something that I'm now moving to, is actually to turn the house that I'm working from into a multidisciplinary area. That will take a while. But I think for a start, it is actually more beneficial to be with a group of people. If that's your personality, if that's what you want.
So actually, I like what you said earlier about the making bookings, especially if you're working on your own. You need to be able to take those phone calls, or if you're unable to take those phone calls, you need to be able to have the time to get back to people, because it is all about building those relationships. So, starting out, especially on your own, is a little bit difficult. Would having an assistant actually make some of that a little bit easier for you, or do you find that it's a lot easier to just schedule certain times of the day to do things like admin, phone back clients, and so that kind of stuff?
I personally feel that an assistant would be an easier and a better would better benefit me as a person, that so I can spend most of my time doing what I love, and that's seeing the kiddies, and treating them. Unfortunately, I think often when you start private practice, it's not always in your, financial ability to have that. But I think it is a very beneficial thing to look into and to get that going right from the start, so that you don't let one client slip through the cracks and never get back to them. Because I wouldn't like to phone a doctor because I'm sick and they never get back to me, So, and it's the same with an occupational therapist. So it definitely would be an asset to any practice to have an assistant that can, and sometimes take all the things that aren't your strong points, be it then if it's debt collection or anything like that, that a system can take on all of that as well.
I'm so glad she has asked that question, because I think it goes with what you were saying earlier. It's almost like having that plan and almost knowing that you need to get that at some point. But as you said, I mean, it's not cheap just hiring an assistant, and also, what would the assistant do for 8 hours a day? I think that's the other thing is, you have to keep them busy, because if you have clients on the hour or on the half hour, the rest of the time, is she going to be that busy, or is he going to be that busy? But if you look at all of the successful CEOs, all of the successful businesses, there's no one that doesn't have an assistant. And I'm putting all of the healthcare practitioners in private practice in the same category, is that, you do what you do best, and you get someone else to manage the admin and the business side of your business or your private practice. And that seems to be the trend. So I think, as soon as you can get that assistance, I think it actually makes you a much more stronger practice as well. That seems to be our experience, with other clients as well. So that's kind of it. Is there anything that we missed before we close this up? I mean, I know we're going on about the time that we said we're going to stop. So is there anything that you would say over and above, or something that we missed around private practice or being an OT? And then we can ask Shaz for her closing thoughts.
No, look, I don't have anything else. I just do think, if there's anyone listening that thinks, is this the right route for me, is to really do your research and follow that passion of yours. And, you can move mountains in your own practice, but you can also move mountains working for someone else. But if it's your drive to do it, go for it, and flourish from there.
I think that's the most phenomenal thing that you could say there, is that at the end of the day, it is about following your passion and your strengths. And if, somebody is thinking about becoming an occupational therapist because they are passionate about being an OT, the next step there is, as you say, to then figure out where that passion is. Are you more passionate about working in a center and moving mountains and doing the best that you can do there? Or is there that drive to have something of your own? And until you can figure that out, kind of stay where you are. Once you've got that roadmap almost along to where you want to go, then you can start making that shift over. Because I think a lot of practitioners, or a lot of people, tend to forget that the moment you move into private practice, not only are you a practitioner, you're also a business owner. So it's two very separate hats, and you need to be able to be prepared to wear both hats. So, and as you grow, yes, definitely look at things like an assistant, because in our experience, once the admin concerns are kind of no longer the therapist's, in the therapist's way, their practices do tend to grow and flourish, because doing what you do best, which, as you say, is playing with the kiddies and helping them, and somebody else is doing the other stuff that tends to just suck some of that energy out of you. So I would say figure out where your passion is, figure out the path that you want to go on, and then once you've got that mapped out, kind of start the a journey to run a practice. It's not a sprint.
That's nicely said, Chas. Yeah, thanks, Ashley, for allowing us to spend some of your time and talking about private practice and being an OT. We really appreciate it. On our side, we wish you, that you get the practice that you really want. And you spoke about some expansion plans, and yeah, we'll keep posted and see how that goes. But I think having a multidisciplinary center would be amazing. I think that's a dream of most practitioners. So that's a really cool goal.
Thanks so much, and thanks for inviting me to be part of it. It's been a fun experience for me to just chat that little bit further and help anyone wherever they are as well.
Thanks very much, Ashley, and hopefully we can chat again soon on how your practice is developing.
Definitely, yeah, I'm looking forward to use more services.
Okay, thank you very much. And we'll speak to you soon.
All right, thanks so much.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening. As always, stay tuned and we'll speak to you in the next episode.